So they're figuring out for Friday morning.
Yeah. There's a seat next to you. Building. There's a car here. It's on the other side.
You're live, Lila.
All right.
Okay, friends, we're gonna invite you to please find your seats. Check your yaps.
Thank you.
Hey, what are y'all doing?
We're getting down that.
Sit down, behave yourself.
Everybody's. Judith, are you doing the same time, or do you want me to get ready? And that was the answer.
What's that?
That was taken. Naomi, do you have one? Do you have a tag, or do you need one?
I don't have one here, and I don't know questions.
Marta has one, Susan needs one.
It's actually no. And they're in the other.
It's okay.
Sunny day.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning. There's Sunny.
Are you gonna let Phil in? Are you sure?
I you like that. I thought.
I can do it. Good morning, little bit of quick good and welfare. First, services tonight are at 6 p.m. Sometimes we get a little confused on that first Shabbat of the month. Some of you made alternate plans for this evening, which I encourage you to change.
That's a cheating, right? No pressure.
Services are at 6. Tomorrow morning, Torah study is as regular at 9:30, and there will be Shabbat morning minyan at 10:45. So we encourage you to come and learn and pray. Other wonderful things are continuing in the month of April. The seats for our second night Seder with Moses and Motown are going very quick. So if you do not have a place to go for second night Seder, please make your arrangements to join us on Sunday evening next week. If the cost is more than you can bear, but you really would like to come, please let us know about that. There are some provisions we're able to make sure that people are able to participate. And in the realm of good and welfare, today is not only the 57th yard site for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it is the 35th anniversary of my first date with Amy Lim. And I want credit that I know that date. And remember it, and Amy and I honor April the 4th every year. It's actually a funny story. We were living at Hebrew University, and in the dorms at Hebrew University, there were hot plates and sort of burners, but no ovens. So she had a friend who had an apartment, and she had baked brownies. And brownies, which was like gold. And she was hanging out in a mutual friend's room, and I said, "Ooh, can I have one of those brownies?" And she said, "Why would I give you one of my brownies?" And I said, "Because I'll make you dinner one night if you give me a brownie." She said, "Okay." And then a friend of mine came in from out of town, and I said to her, "I think I might need to reschedule." She said, "No, why don't we just all go to dinner that night?" And so we had Chinese food. We watched The World According to Garp, and then went to a dance club. And that's it.
Just-
The rest, well, there's a lot of history in between, but you don't get to know all of it.
Also, good and welfare, Martha's birthday, and she's celebrating with learning today. I'm so excited. Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Martha. Happy birthday to you.
Skip around the room. Okay,
Mark,
I will let Rabbi Haas do the introduction for our wonderful speaker who's with us today, but we are going to continue to try to add more Friday morning learning opportunities in this slot. And so if this is a good time for you, keep it open because we're gonna keep adding new things. And if it isn't a good time for you, I assume you're not here. So there you go. Okay.
Okay, well, I'm so pleased that we're all here today to continue our learning journey. We have a real treat today to have Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Cohen.
I'm quite wrong.
Oh, okay. So I want to just introduce, and then I'm gonna let Rabbi Cohen do a little brief introduction of himself as well, but, you know, when you have the joy of going through school and then, you know, you enjoy your learning, you have wonderful teachers, but then you have a teacher that transforms your vision, view, understanding of the world. Rabbi Cohen is that teacher for me from rabbinical school. So Rabbi Cohen I was first introduced to him on the Cincinnati campus in rabbinical school when I showed up we had mandatory classes and then electives, and our mandatory class was Talmud 401. We pile in, and here's Rabbi Cohen Dr. Cohen at the time, sitting at the front of the room, and he opens up the Talmud in front of us. And from that moment forward, we were transformed by his understanding, his command of Jewish law, of understanding and his command of what it means to be engaged in a rich discussion through centuries of text. And I was telling him yesterday, I said, I'm not sure you know this, but my chavruta in school, Mara and you gave us an assignment that we had to learn the rabbis of the Talmud. I said, you gave us this huge number of rabbis that we had to, he goes, Lila, it was 20 rabbis. I was like, no way, it was like 150 rabbis. We had to learn everything about them. And I remember printing off Encyclopedia Judaica and reading through these rabbis. And I said, I just want you to know that the way that we learned them was one of us in the chavruta pair would read the biography of the rabbi and the other one would illustrate it. And we would draw the rabbis, and then we wallpapered the house of these rabbis. And so he's like, all right, well, okay, that's one way to learn the rabbis, so thank you for bringing that to me. But it was his classes that truly transformed my understanding of what it means to dive into Jewish text and also to fall in love with the richness and wisdom of our tradition. And so I'm so pleased that he's here with us and look forward to our learning today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for organizing it. Thank you guys for not only hosting me, but for organizing it in a time slot that I understand is not a usual time slot for learning, and for all being here for this. There's nothing more meaningful and joyous for me than to not only meet friends and to be here with people that I love, but to talk Torah, to speak a little bit about Torah, and to engage in discussion. And I hope that we're going to be able to do that today. I hope that we're going to be able to do that today together. To just say a few words about myself. I'm Israeli born. I'm a lawyer by training. I wrote my doctorate in England in comparative law, and arrived in America to teach at Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, where I spent about 20 years, and that was where I had the good fortune of meeting your rabbi. Rabbi Haas was amazing, and met and known Rabbi Dan for many years. And it's a joy to be back here. It really is lovely to be here. I want you to know, I said this yesterday, I have been a teacher of people of all ages, and I'm the father of 3 children. So I'm constantly interrupted. So don't worry about interrupting me because I'm used to it. This is part of my life, and the idea is this ought to be a discussion. This ought to be a conversation. And I wanted to share some thoughts with you leading towards Passover today. And in this moment that is between Purim and Passover, leading towards the Passover and thinking about Jewish time and thinking about redemption and what redemption looks like in the context of Jewish time, and offering you a sense of Jewish time that I think we may not have gotten at religious school. I think we might have skipped some of the things I'm about to talk about in Sunday school, but I'm going to make this request. If I'm sharing with you and I speak with you about things that you already know, please tell me. I don't want to bore you and tell you things you already know. I want us to really talk about some new things and to generate some new insights. And as always, we bring to these learning sessions ourselves and the moment, right? So this Passover is different from last Passover. This year is different from last year. And it's not just the stock market. But this year is different from last year, and is different from the previous year, and is different from 10 years ago. And we bring the moment. So I'm going to make a special request. And the request that I'm going to make of you is that when we speak about Torah today, you divide your attention between Torah and what we speak about today, and your experience right now, and what redemption and the hope for redemption, the hope for improvement, the hope for better, the hope for goodness means to us right now. And I'm going to ask you to think about these things at the same time, because that's what Passover really is about. So we're going to do some moments of Purim and Passover, and I'm going to explain why. And I'm going to ask you to think about this, and we're going to talk about this as we go. Okay? You ready? Okay, let's start. Okay. That looks like close. Oh, that's okay.
There.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I want to explain something for a moment about Jewish time. And because today we're going to talk about time, because everything occurs in time, and the Passover is a moment in time. Purim is a moment in time, and these moments that we take, the moment we take right now in time, are moments of framing. They're special moments wherein we step out of time to make sense of time and to add meaning to the time that we live through right now. So what we're doing right now, and I'm going to speak about this in a greater sense in just a few seconds, right? We ask ourselves, what does this moment mean? Where are we in our lives right now? What does this moment mean for us? Where is our life right now? Where are the lives of our family members right now? Where are we in terms of life, not only for ourselves, but for our children, for our grandchildren, for our loved ones, for our friends, for members of our community? What is the meaning of this moment for us, for others, right? How do we mark the moment? How do we make sense of the moment? and how do we make the best of the moment right now, and how do we celebrate it? In order to do that, we need to be in the moment. We need to be here and now, right? But in order to do that, we also need to reflect on the moment and be outside the moment. We need to step out of the moment and back into the moment. Yes? That is the function of the Jewish calendar. And this, at the end of the day, is the function of Torah. Because Torah occurs in time. If we make no time for Torah, there is no Torah. And Torah remains in the book. And that's the exercise we're going to engage in today. And so the framing of this moment with Torah to help us make sense of our lives. And to make sense of our lives, not only in order to have greater insights and to maybe have greater appreciation, but also reinforce ourselves, reinforce our sense of hope, reinforce our values, reinforce our mission, and our own sense of potential redemption. Am I making sense? Yeah. And this is the reason for which I'm going to ask you to join me as we start now in a blessing that we utter when we study Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. In other words, to now stop and engage in words of Torah, so that we're able to then come in and re-engage with the moments. Okay? And that's what we're going to do right now. So let's start the talk. I want to start with the scroll of Esther. And I want to start with the scroll of Esther so that you understand why we're talking about Purim and Passover at the same time. And I'm going to start in the middle, toward the middle, third of the scroll of Esther, chapter 3. And I'm going to start from chapter 3, verse 7. And I want you to look at the screen for a moment and tell me what you see. In the first month, that is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of the reign of King Ahasuerus, the lot was cast, right, concerning the day and the month when Haman was going to kill the Jews, and he selected the 12th month, in other words, 11 months away from that time, right? You know, the end of that year, right? What month are we in? Nisan. Nisan.
Not Toyer.
Huh? I'm sorry?
Not Toyer.
And when does the story of Esther actually take place? The story of Purim. When does it actually take place? No. The month of Nisan. The month of Adar occurs 11 months later, right? That's when the Jews defend themselves. That's when, you know, the actual riot throughout Persia occurs and the Jews defend themselves. But all of what happens here in the context of the Esther story occurs when? In the month of Nisan, right? And so what Haman says then to the king of Ahasuerus, now, this Shabbat, this occurs this Shabbat, let your majesty allow me to kill the Jews and give you money. And Ahasuerus says, yes, go ahead, do whatever you like. So I want to share this with you, and I want you to see this. I'm feeling badly because I'm not sure you can see what's on the screen, right? It's a little bit small. I can barely see what's on the screen. And I'm sorry, I wish it were a little bit larger. I will reproduce it for you in a larger format if you are interested. Okay, but look at what is happening here. The first 2 weeks of Nisan, Haman decides he goes through a series of lotteries until there is the final lottery of deciding when the day is going to be where he's going to annihilate, decimate the Jews of Persia, right? This occurs within the first 2 weeks of Nisan. We are in this moment now. On the 14th of Nisan, which is the Erev Passover, Eve of Passover, the day of the Seder, next Saturday, Esther learns about this. right? This is the second rubric. For 3 days, she calls for a fast. Between the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th of Nisan, during the Passover week, she holds her feasts for Haman and Achashverosh. By the end of the Passover week, Haman and his family are hanged. When does the redemption of Purim actually take place? Over Pesach, the week of Pesach.
Stacy Goodkin or Stacy?
It all happens during the time of Pesach. So really, what happens over Pesach? I want you to see this, right? Esther enters into the palace of Achashverosh in Tebet. The plagues start in Shvat, according to the rabbis. Each plague took a week. And if each plague took a week, then it took 10 weeks. There were 10 plagues. And if there were 10 plagues, they started on the first day of Shvat, right? Aleph of Shvat was the beginning of the plagues. We are now entering into the week of the last plague of Makat Bechorot, right? Right now, we're still in darkness in Egypt, right? And we are reliving right now in Jewish time, both the Purim story and the Passover story simultaneously. Did you know that? They didn't teach you this in Sunday school? No? Well, so, right? But you see what I'm saying? What do we do here with Jewish time? What do we do with Jewish time? Right? We frame the moment. We frame the moment. We think about what happened, right? And what are we looking at here? What are we framing with? What are we using in Torah to frame the moment? We are using a particular set, now a set of two, moments of crisis. One in Egypt and one in Persia that occur simultaneously. Simultaneously. And of course, by the end of the Passover week, Mordechai is installed as prime minister, if you like, or as the counselor to the king. Haman is gone. All of that occurs during the week of Passover. Right? It's remarkable. It's a remarkable confluence. Right? So we don't have a redemption on Passover. We have two. Okay? Now this allows us to frame. Now it's also really challenging for people like me, because I'm kind of simple-minded. You know, I focus on one thing at a time. I don't like to divide my attention. I find that it's not as effective for me. And I like to focus on either Pesach or Purim. So I'm really grateful to the rabbis for having decided that Purim will be celebrated on Adar and not on Nisan, so that I can really focus on Purim a month before and then focus on Pesach coming up now. But in reality, I'm reliving these two stories right now. And it's challenging for me. And it's in part challenging for me because the redemptions, these stories are so completely different. And I want to talk to you about this for a second. I want us to think about this for a second. In many ways, they're the negatives, the opposites of each other. Right? And I want us to think about how we make sense of that and how we connect the dots between Purim and Passover, because at the end of the day, what we want to emerge with is hope and faith in what may be goodness and redemption to come. How do we connect these dots? So first of all, we have to understand what we're talking about. Now this we can read. Look at these two elements of Purim and Passover and how they end. For Passover, the Jews leave Egypt for the land of Israel. Purim, the whole point is they stay in Persia. They're in the diaspora, they stay in Persia. Purim, there's no mention of God. God is not mentioned a single time in the whole of the Esther scroll. Passover, God, 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 God. God says to Moses, do this. God says to the Israelites, do that. God says to Aaron, go with God. Like God, 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 God is the person behind the plagues. God is the protagonist of the Passover story, right? God is everywhere, right? In Purim, Jewish leaders, right, become the leaders of Persia. In the Passover story, the Jews, not only do they not become leaders of Egypt, they rebel against Egypt. They leave Egypt. They go away. For Purim, the Jews are reinstated as citizens by the end of the Purim story. In Egypt, they're expelled and they become an independent, separate nation. For Purim, Ahasuerus remains the king. He remains the emperor. Pharaoh is overthrown. He and his armies sink in the Red Sea, right? They're opposite stories. It's the complete opposite. Which begs the question, what does redemption look like? What redemption are we supposed to be praying for and hoping for? Is redemption the redemption of Cohen, where we go back to the way things used to be in Persia, where we become reinstated citizens and we happily go about our lives, and there's less anti-Semitism and we are more comfortable, and everything is nicer with our neighbors and we feel more at peace with our families, and all being well, Israel is doing better and other Jewish communities are doing better and the world is doing better. I mean, is this the redemption world, or are we looking for a redemption wherein Israel is strengthened? We are looking at an independent state of Israel that now is at peace. That now, what is the redemption we're looking for? What are we looking for? Are we looking for an Egypt redemption, a redemption from Egypt? Are we looking for an identity that separates us from others and renders us distinct? Or are we looking for a Purim redemption wherein we remain integrated, we reintegrate, and we become respected for who we are within our environment that's a non-Jewish environment? What are we looking for? What are we praying for? What are we hoping for? Right? I'm raising these questions for you to be thinking about your lives here and now, right? And for us to talk about Torah and about our lives at the same time, which is what this is about, right? What are we going to be praying for this last week? Right? As we live through Passover and Purim at the same time.
I have a question.
Please.
Before we get into what is redemption. So who are the rabbis that determined that Purim should be celebrated in the dark? I mean, like, I'm wondering,
Yeah.
time-wise,
Yeah.
where does that come from?
Okay, so it comes from two places. One, and here I want to be clear about this. One is biblical, pre-rabbis. At the end of the scroll of Esther, Esther determines that Purim will be celebrated in the month of Adar, and that the story will be told for every generation to come. So if you read the Babylonian Talmud, right, Tractate Megillah, chapter 2, page 14, if you read Tractate Megillah, page 14 of the Babylonian Talmud, in there, the rabbis comment on this. I'm going to make a parenthetical comment. The rabbis comment on this, and the rabbis say something remarkable. All the prophets of the Jewish people, all of them, all 55 prophets after Moses, the 48 men and the 7 women, all 55 prophets, including the greatest minds, the greatest prophets who ever lived, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, the 12 so-called minor prophets who weren't minor at all, like all the prophets, all of this incredible insight that's definitive of our Judaism. Not a single commandment was added. From none of what they wrote, not a single commandment was added to our lives. We never stop in time. For all of the prophetic literature, we never stop any moment in time and fulfill a commandment that comes to us from the prophets. Have you ever thought why the rabbis added the Haftorah to the Torah portion?
And,
And we need to learn the prophets. There's nothing normative within Judaism that demands us, for all the 55 prophets, the bulk of the Torah, or the bulk of the Bible, right? The bulk of the Tanakh. There's not a single mitzvah that emerges from the whole of the prophetic literature. Where is our mitzvah? From one prophet, one prophetess, Esther.
yes,
And we have a mitzvah of reading the Megillah every year for all generations. This Bavli Megillah, page 14, second chapter. Okay, it's remarkable, absolutely remarkable, right? So it's Esther who determines that we celebrate in Adar and that we read the Megillah. It's the rabbis who determine how we celebrate Cohen. But it's a biblical holiday. And in fact, the last biblical holiday to be added to the Jewish calendar. Yeah, did I?
so at what point do these rabbis, the prophets, what is the time frame of the rabbis talking about being part of Nisa?
Okay, great question. Here I'm going to, is it okay for me to to respond? I'm not gonna go at great length, but I am going to respond in a serious way to the question because it's a really important question. Esther is the last book, it's the last document to be added to the canon of the Hebrew Bible. We believe that it is added to the Hebrew Bible, to the canon of the Hebrew Bible. I can talk about this at great length, I will not. But it's added to the canon of the Hebrew Bible, we believe, either in the 4th or the 3rd century before the Common Era. In reality, Esther is a Greek document. It's a Greek Jewish document. It's not a Persian Jewish document. It's a Greek Jewish document. When we speak about the rabbis, and it's the last element to be added to the canon, by the time the common era starts, by the time we get to 0, we already have the Hebrew Bible that is canonized. There's books that are in, and there are books that are out. And Esther is in, the last book to be in. When we speak about the rabbis, we speak about the Jewish leaders, the leaders of the Jewish people, the learned ones, the literate ones, who taught Torah, who commented on Torah, and who functioned after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in the year 70. So we're now centuries later, right? And these are the people who now flesh out and explain to us, and in certain ways record how we have already been celebrating Purim and what we do and what we don't do, Tanit Esther and the transfer between Tanit Esther and Purim and all the rest of it, right? Which leads us to Tractate Megillah, which records some of that lore in the Babylonian Talmud. Okay? Does that help? 3rd, 4th century before the Common Era to 1st century to the Common Era and beyond, right? So we are now in the 21st century of Rabbinic Judaism. Okay? Yes? Okay, good. Can we continue? Yes, okay.
Was there ever discussion that the reason that it is celebrated Purim and Adar is to separate it, but it has its importance, so that they're not two things if you add it right where Passover is?
So that's a great one. Wow, you're asking amazing question. It's a wonderful question you're asking. Why in Adar? Why separate Purim and Passover? Why Yom? So remember what we just read in the scroll of Esther, chapter 3, verse 7. In Nisan, the 1st month, Nisan, right, in the 12th year of the reign of Ahasuerus, right, Haman cast his lot for when to destroy the Jewish people, right? And what do we celebrate in Purim? The survival and redemption of the Jewish people from that horrific plot, right? The first government-sponsored anti-Jewish plot in the history, the recorded history of our nation, right? This is what the story of Esther is. And unfortunately not the last, but the first state-sponsored entire policy set out to decimate the Jewish people in Persia. The first time we hear about such a plot ever is the scroll of Esther, right? All right, so we have the scroll of Esther and the redemption of Esther. And the question is, why are they separate from Passover? You think about this until the rabbinic age. And I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna talk about this. I'm going to add some information to this today, as we speak about this today. But in the rabbinic lore, the beginning of our Jewish year is when? When is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? What month? Tishrei, right? It's in the fall, right? The month of Tishrei, we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot. That is the beginning of our year, right? What did you read in the scroll of Esther here? The first month was when? Nisan, it's now, it's the month of Passover. The Jewish Hebrew month until the rabbinic age, until about the end of until about the beginning of the Common Era, that beginning of the Jewish year was Nisan. It was not Tishrei. It became Tishrei later, right?
Well, that's why our calendar is the way it is.
So that's why the calendar is the way it is, right? And a remarkable calendar. But think about it from the perspective of an Esther. Think about it from the perspective of those people for whom the beginning of the year was Nisan, right? What does it mean that we separate Purim and Passover in the way that we have? It means that we start the year with the redemption of Passover and we end the year with the redemption of Purim, right? One is in Nisan, the other is in Adar, the very end of the year. We start with redemption, we end with redemption, they're a month apart. And by the way, this is again, now I'm really going off on a tangent. Now really forgive me. What does Purim correspond to in the world? Not our world, but in another world, in Persia to this day, right? No rules. No rules. Have you ever heard? Have you ever heard of the Persian holiday? Right?
How do you spell it?
Nowruz, N-O-W-R-U-Z or S, right? What is that Zoroastrian Persian holiday? It's the beginning of the year. And what does it coincide with? Purim. And what do? They send gifts to each other. They do mishloach manot. And you know what else they do? They go out onto a river or a sea and they cast pieces of bread of the last year.
Or they copycats.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, this is reflective of a culture. What we have here is a repository of the human experience through these stories and through the calendar. And the magic of the calendar is that we make the time to tell the stories. So we start with redemption and we end with redemption. And that's the reason they're separated in time the way that they are. It's the wisdom in it is extraordinary when we really get into it. And unfortunately, I don't have the time to really go into it right now. But we get it, we understand. But our task right now is to connect the dots. It's to figure out how do we make sense of Purim and Passover together. Purim, the complete diaspora holiday, Passover that is an expulsion from Egypt in order to get into the land of Israel, right? The whole thing is us entering into the land of Israel. We're not going into the Sinai desert to build up the Sinai desert, right? We were going to build up the land of Israel. Yes? And the question is, how do we make sense of it? So let me make things more complicated.
Let me breathe. Let me take a breath.
Please breathe. Breathe in, breathe. Breathing is important. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathing is really important. Let me make things a little bit more complicated. Okay, and I think I'm gonna again share with you things that you may not have gotten in Sunday school. But I hope that we are going to get to a place wherein we celebrate the Passover in just over a week in a richer way. And we think about this for ourselves in a richer way. Okay, are we ready? Okay, okay, breathe in, breathe out. Good. Okay, Ezra, the book of Ezra, chapter 1. Do you know the book of Ezra?
No.
Okay, the book of Ezra, chapter 1. In the first year of the reign of King Cyrus of Persia. By the way, Persia was the largest empire in the world. I mean, Persia was Cyrus, you know that Cyrus fought the Greeks. This is, okay. The word spoken to Jeremiah was fulfilled, and to make a long story short, Cyrus says, I heard the prophecy of the God of Israel. I'm going to allow the people of Israel, the God of heaven has given me the kingdoms of the earth, all the kingdoms of the earth, and has charged me with building to God a house in Jerusalem. We're 70 years after the expulsion of the Babylonians from Jerusalem. The expulsion took place in 586 BCE, before the Common Era. Now we're 70 years later, so we're 516 BCE, right? And Cyrus is going to build a temple for the Jews in Persia, the way the prophets had claimed, and the way Jeremiah the prophet had explained was going to happen, right? Is this amazing? Yes? Talk about entering into the land of Israel, and right? Yes? And not only did he say that, they started creating policies around it, right? So Cyrus tweeted, I heard that, and then suddenly the whole of the government started creating policies and putting all of this thing together, right? So God's people, all of you God's people, whoever you are, the Jews, the Israelites, the Hebrews, go, God bless you, go, God be with you, and let you go to Jerusalem. I'm letting you go to Jerusalem. And for those of you who want to stay, you guys can stay. And you know what you can do? You can create federations. And these federations can have fundraising campaigns. So you can assist your friends and family members with silver and gold and goods and livestock and free will offerings from the temple. We're going to organize you here so that you're all connected, and you here are going to support your brothers and sisters who are going to Israel. We're going to organize all of this. The people who want, go to Jerusalem. The people who stay and are free to support their brothers and sisters in Israel. I'm sorry? Yeah, this is in the book of Ezra. This is the book of Ezra. I didn't invent, it's all written. I didn't write this, right? Okay, so King Cyrus then did something else. All the vessels, the gold, the silver, the copper, all the vessels of the temple, they had been taken by the Babylonians, right? Before they burnt the temple. And they were brought as loot to Babylonia. Now Persia took over from Babylonia as the great empire. What's he doing? He brings them back. He says, these are yours, take them. Think about the generosity of it. I mean, amazing. Not only that, they're giving a receipt. They create an inventory of all of the stuff that was in the temple, all the dishes, all the implements that were in the temple, and they gave them back for the people who are going to go to Jerusalem to rebuild a Jewish temple. Okay? Yes? I'm moving forward. When the 7th month arrived, this is for you. When the 7th month arrived, the priests started to build an altar in the site that had been the first temple that was burnt by the Babylonians. This is the beginning of the building of the second temple. Do you know where we get Rosh Hashanah from? In the month of Tishrei.
Why don't you tell it?
Do you know where we get Rosh Hashanah from? Do you know why we celebrate? Why are we celebrating Rosh Hashanah in Tishrei? This is why we celebrate Rosh Hashanah in Tishrei, right? Because this was the beginning of worship, right? This is why, yes?
So what, my question is, before we go on, obviously this Ezra book, this book of Ezra, it's a book, right?
It's a book.
Right. It's a pretty important book.
It's a pretty, if it weren't really important, I don't think I would bring it to you.
None of us in here knew about it.
Well,
But that's why I wanted to share this with you.
So
That's why this is so, what we're talking about is so important because this is our Jewish identity. This is where we come from. This is our Jewish rootedness. This is what we're talking about. And I figured you might have, missed that Sunday school class on Ezra, right? And no, but seriously, we don't talk about this book. It's extremely important. And this is just the beginning. So let's take,
can I just say one more thing?
yeah,
My whole adult life, well, let's put it this way. I moved to Boca Raton in 1997.
uh-huh,
Before that, I was from a small town in Ohio, and then I moved to the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay
Okay.
Area. Both of those communities were nothing like community in Boca Raton as far as Jewish
right,
community.
right.
And ever since I've lived in Boca, as much as I truly feel we have good education for our kids
Yeah.
and everything else, I don't feel that the kids growing up here understand their place in the continuum.
This, you know what?
And,
Um.
and I understand my place. It's been drilled into me since I was a baby, right, and stuff. But I don't understand, there's just so much more Judaism around them here socially, I guess, still like New York, I guess, but different, that it just really bothers me that they don't get it,
So
you know?
I have to tell you something, you're raising a huge issue. You're raising a huge issue. I don't know you and this has been the mission of my adult life.
Oh, well, that, cool,
And this is the reason I have become a rabbi.
that's cool.
Wow.
And I agree with you. I agree with you. There are a number of things that we can do about this, but you've already done one of them. You have an amazing rabbi here. No, but you have an amazing rabbi who's recently arrived, who
Right.
gets it and who understands it. The leadership of this temple understands it. You have educators here who understand it. And this, and I'm going to say something else to you where I'm going to now reveal my hand. So normally I wouldn't say this, but I'm going to reveal my hand and say it. If the adults know their place in the Jewish continuum, and the adults can bring it to the Shabbat table, and the adults can bring it to the Seder table, and the adults can bring it to family occasions, then the temple here is not alone,
That's exactly right.
right? And then we work on this together and we create that sense of continuum. But I have to say this to you, the book of Ezra, to understand it, is really important. Is really important. And this is why I bring it to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Need to diverge.
Yeah, I would love to talk further. I would love to talk further. And I'd love to hear what town you're from in Ohio. I'm right now from Cleveland, Ohio, outside Cleveland, Ohio. And I spent 20 years in Cincinnati, in the Cincinnati area.
East Liverpool.
Yeah, I know East Liverpool too. I know East, so I'd love to learn more. Okay, let me continue, right? So they began, I'm going to now run through this for lack of time. They began to make burnt offerings to God. In other words, worship started. And after worship started, the builders laid the foundation of the temples. The worship started first, and then they laid the foundation stone for the temple. And they sang songs. And you know what they sang? The same songs we sing to this day, they sang, right? They sang the same songs praising God when they laid the cornerstone for the building of the temple. And I want to show this to you because, right, the priests and the Levites and the chiefs, the old people, they wept. People wept because 70 years had gone by, but there were some old people who still remembered the first temple. I mean, can you imagine the setting? Can you imagine what we're talking about here? Right? People coming back, and there's some people who had lived through the existence of the first temple and its destruction, who are now seeing it being rebuilt. Right? I mean, right? And the joy and the weeping and I read these words. Look, I read the book of Ezra and I read the rabbinic literature, and I have to say, I read this and the words jump at me. I mean, I can imagine myself. I can see the kind of moment in which this was. Okay, let me move forward. Here comes the real issue that I want to bring to you. Now we have the setting. We understand what was going on. This is 70 years past the destruction of the temple. There were opponents to Judah and Benjamin. Who were these opponents to Judah and Benjamin? There were two expulsions that took place in the land of Israel. We're gonna talk about the Maccabees. This is not yet the Maccabees. We're not there. We're not at the Maccabees yet. There are two expulsions that take place. In the year 721 before the Common Era, the Assyrian Empire destroyed the kingdom of Israel completely. There was a 2-year siege, 2 full-year siege of the capital of the city of Israel. And the entire nation of Israel, the kingdom of Israel, was destroyed. And what the Assyrians were very good at doing is taking the population of one nation state that they had conquered and moving it to other parts of the empire, and taking people from other parts of the empire and moving them to that place. Have you heard of the Samaritans? The Samaritans were brought in by the Assyrians to settle into the land of Israel. They brought in all kinds of people to settle into the land because they didn't want these people to be ethnically connected, because they wanted them to be citizens of Assyria. And the way to do this was to spread people around and to disconnect them from their land, right? It was going to make things more convenient. And by the way, nobody had much of a choice. Everybody was moved. The Babylonians did a similar thing in the year 586 when they destroyed the kingdom of Judah and Jerusalem and the temple. So now those Persians, the Jews of Persia, are coming back because Cyrus said to them, you can go back. You're welcome to go back to Jerusalem. But the land is not empty. There are people living there. And some of them have been living there for centuries. Since the 8th century before the Common Era. More than 200 years. 200 years. And they're seeing these people come in. It's 8 generations. They've been living on the land. And they're saying, well, who are these people who are coming from Persia into what is now our home? This all happened a long time ago. Okay, think about this for a second. Think about this for a second, right? So here we are, the opponents, right? Look at what Ezra is telling us. Look at the dynamic he's describing. The opponents of the people of Judah and Benjamin who had survived, they returned it, and they are now alarmed. There's more and more people coming in. And what are they going to do? Are they going to take our land? Are they going to take our jobs? Are like how is this going to work? Are they going to try to run things? Are they going to take away power from us? How is this going to work? And they say to the Babylonian returnees, the Jewish Babylonian Persian returnees, they say to them, let us build with you since we arrived in this land, we knew this was the God of our land. We've been worshiping the God of this land. Let us participate with you in the rebuilding of the temple. Let's do this together. Right? They're suspicious of them, and they say, you know what, let's get in on this and see what we do with these people. And the chiefs of the clans, and I can talk about Zerubbabel, Yeshua. For people who don't know, Yeshua is Hebrew for Jesus, right? The word Jesus, the name Jesus, is a Jewish name, and it's Yeshua, and it's a biblical name, and it occurs, long before. Anyway, okay, but Zerubbabel, Yeshua, the rest of the chiefs of the clans of Israel answer them, no, it is not for you, it is for us to build the house of God because of the permission we were granted specifically by Cyrus, the king of Persia. This is what happened. This is the dynamic. No, thank you very much, we don't need your help. We're going to do this on our own. You like the story?
Yeah, I do.
It's a really important, really important story. Oh, I always talk about things that are completely irrelevant. It's got nothing to do with our lives. Torah, nothing to do.
It was back then and had no relevance. to it.
No relevance to anything, right? Okay, now let's talk. Okay, now we understand the setting. Now let's talk. Thereupon, the people of the land said, you know what? You're not gonna include us. We're gonna do everything we can to slow you down and to make life difficult for you. So they hired lobbyists. It says they hired people. They hired lobbyists. They bribed ministers. And they did everything they could to thwart their plans. You have no idea what they did. Every time a building permit was needed, every time, you have no, every time, all of the things that they did, right? Yes? Well, oh, what do you mean? Wait a minute, you think we invented anything? So here they are, and they're saying, we're gonna do everything we can. We're going to now organize. These people don't want to collaborate with us. We're going to organize, and we're going to try to do everything to undermine them, to stop their plans, and to slow them down, right? And in the reign of Achashverosh, name sound familiar? Achashverosh? At the start of his reign, they produced a letter of accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. Chapter 4 of the book of Ezra. Oh. So maybe the stories are not completely disconnected. Did you know about this?
No.
Well, they didn't teach you this in Sunday school, right? Okay, so do you see what is going on here? Do you understand what just happened? Now, this is an area, this is a moment where I read the book of Ezra, which, as I say, I know the book of Ezra. This is one of those moments where I get really frustrated. I'm a scholar, and I'm a rabbi, and I'm a teacher, and I get really frustrated because I want to see the letter. Where is the letter? Show me the letter. They wrote the letter. I want to see the letter. But they forgot the attachment. And now go find the letter. Go figure out what they wrote. Go find. But they wrote another letter. And we have that letter. And here is what the letter says. Then Rechum the commissioner and Shimshai the scribe wrote a letter to Artaxerxes, a future king, right? Beyond Ahasuerus, right? Your servants, men of the province beyond the river, that's the Jordan River. Be it known to the king that the Jews who came up from you to us have reached Jerusalem and are rebuilding this rebellious and wicked city, they're writing, okay? Now, be it known to the king that if the city is rebuilt, the walls completed, they will not pay tribute. They're not going to pay their taxes, their poll taxes, the land taxes, and it will harm your kingdom, right? Now we are loyal to you. We eat the salt of the palace. We're loyal to you. We want to advise you that this is a really bad idea. And this is a city that has been rebellious, harmful to kings and states. Look at your historical records. Sedition has been rife in it from early times. On that account, the city was destroyed. Why is Jerusalem destroyed? Because they rebelled against Babylonians, against Assyrians, against Egyptians. They've always rebelled. They have a reputation, these Jews. They go off on their own, they do their own thing. They're independent, they're not good for you. It's harmful to you, right? And if they build this city and they control this territory, they will not allow you control anywhere beyond the Jordan River. Beyond the Jordan River, forget it. It's going to become theirs. This is what they want. Lovely. So now I have an inkling with regard to what they wrote in the letter to Ahasuerus. Now, do you know how long it took to rebuild the second temple? More than 450 years.
Sounds like Florida.
More than 450 years. They did a really good job with these building permits. 450 years, right? Now we go back here for a second. Take a look at the accusation of Haman against the Jews and the accusation of the people of the land against the Jews. Esther chapter 3, verses 7 to 9. What did Haman say to Ahasuerus that we celebrated in Cohen 3 weeks ago? What did he say? There is a people scattered around and dispersed throughout your kingdom, living in different areas of your kingdom. Remember all of that, yes? Whose laws are different from those of other people, who do not obey the king's laws, number 2, and it is not in your majesty's interest. In other words, they will harm your majesty. What are these people saying? According to the book of Ezra, what are they saying? They will not pay tribute. They are not going to obey your laws. They're not going to pay tribute. You will no longer have any portion. They're going to reject your dominion over this land, and it's bad for you, right? Look at the parallels. Look at the parallels. And now I ask myself the question, and I want to ask you the question. Is it possible that the two stories of Cohen and the book of Ezra are connected? Is it possible that Haman wasn't acting on his own, but that there was a whole lobby of people who were lobbying against these Jews, who were disloyal, who were going to do their own thing, whom we didn't like? We don't want them around, and we don't want them to have their own country, and we don't want them to control Jerusalem. Is it possible that Haman wasn't just the lone Amalekite, the lone anti-Semite, but that there was an organization there? There were lobbyists, there was money, there was letter writing, there were professors in university, there was everything. Is it conceivable that Esther and Mordechai were relying on a Jewish set of organizations, Jewish federations, Jewish lobbies, Jewish organizations, but these other people had their own, and that Haman was a figurehead? Is it possible that the stories were connected? And how could they not be? Right?
It's just time, it's just time. And that's the disconnect.
So I wanted to raise this issue with you. And I wanted to raise this issue with you because we're about to celebrate the Seder. And because Passover is about to start. And in the context of the Passover, we don't only celebrate the Exodus from Egypt, because the Exodus from Egypt was the first step, but there was a goal in mind. There was an objective. There was a destination. The destination was the land of Israel, it was Zion. Right? And that's what we celebrate at the Seder. Right? So I want you to think about this for a second, because this is the connection of our dots. And I'm going to make a special request of you right now. That when you sing the Dayenu, you think about me and about what we're talking about, right? Now, I'm going to tell you the letter and the story of Ezra and the story of Purim are connected. I know they are connected because when Esther, having heard about Haman's plot, went into 3 days of fasting and thinking about what she was going to do, and eventually decided to, at the risk of her life, go to Ahasuerus, and Ahasuerus agreed to see her. He said to her, look at this, I will give you what you grant, even to half the kingdom, it shall be granted to you. To half the kingdom, right? Which sounds amazing, very generous. But the rabbis, the Talmudic rabbis and Rashi, what do they write on the scroll of Esther? They write, Cyrus eventually discontinued the work on the temple because of the pressure of the local lobbies, right? And Ahasuerus, who succeeded him, he too discontinued the work. So the simple meaning of the verse is, even if you request half of the empire from me, I will give it to you, but I will not rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. This is what it means up to half the kingdom, up to half the empire. In other words, what do I learn from this? That the letter was effective, that the lobbying effort was effective, and that Ahasuerus stopped. And the stories of Purim and the story of Ezra are connected. So when we talk about the redemption of Purim and the redemption of Passover, and we get to this timeline that I showed you was parallel, because the story of Purim, the bulk of the story of Purim, takes place during the Passover week. We're reliving both stories at the same time. What is the redemption that we're looking at? We're looking at a redemption wherein we live in a diaspora. We live in Persia. We live in Egypt. We live in the desert. We move from place to place. We may be in East Liverpool, Ohio, or in the Bay Area, or in Boca. We may be in different places. We may be from different places. We are a migrant people, and I am an immigrant, and there are other immigrants here. And what do we seek? We seek a temple in Jerusalem. We seek an independence. We seek a Jewish autonomy. We seek to be able to fully live our lives and to live with dignity and with respect where we are. We seek to be recognized as full human beings. This is the world we pray for.
But we seek to be, quote unquote, a diaspora away from a central place also. Because they're talking about building
Yes,
the central place here.
yes, but they're also talking about staying. They're also talking about staying put, right? Not everybody is going to
Not
go,
everybody's leaving.
right? But and we remain all connected.
But the diaspora will support.
The diaspora will support and remain connected.
So vote.
So vote, right? That's what they did in Persia, right? So vote and participate and engage and contribute, right? But what world are we looking for? What is the redemption that we're looking for? We're looking to be recognized as fully human as others are. We look for basic fairness. We look for basic justice. We look to not be hated for who we are and what we represent. It's been going on for 2,500 years. Right? So I'm making a special request that I just mentioned a few moments ago. I know my time is up. I am aware of that. I'm going to only keep you for a moment longer. Forgive me for going a bit long. But I'm going to make this special request from you. You remember the Dayenu? Dayenu, yeah, remember? That we're going to sing, right? At the Passover table. How does the Dayenu end? What is the end of the Dayenu? If God had entered us into the land, right? Yes, and had not built for us the temple of choice, the Beit HaBchira, the temple of God, right? God is not Dayenu, but God had built for us the temple in Jerusalem. Therefore, how much more should we be grateful to God, right? This is the end of the Dayenu, the very end of the Dayenu. What is it that is the redemption of Passover? What are we looking for in the redemption of Passover? To have the presence of God in this world. To feel like there's a glimmer, there is a center, there is a locus for the divine presence here in our world. To finally repair and fix, to heal, to comfort, and to bring us a greater sense of justice. This is the Dayenu, this is our Passover. And this is what we have to continue to commit to. This is what we have to continue to say. This is what we have to continue to believe in. This is our mission in the world. This is why we celebrate Pesach. This is why we do the Seder. This is why we do the Passover. Because at the end of the day, we recognize that the redemption of Purim and the redemption of Passover are one. They're connected. That the stories are connected. That our rootedness in these stories is connected. That this is our identity. This is who we are. Which doesn't mean we're any less American. It doesn't mean we're any less of anything else. We just want to be seen for who we are. To be recognized and to be treated justly. And this is why we sing the Dayenu. At the end of the day, the world would be an amazing place had God not built the temple in Jerusalem. The gifts that God had showered on us were so magnificent to begin with. The Dayenu, Dayenu, we wouldn't complain. We would say Dayenu, right? Our cup overflows. Yes? But look at what has been achieved. Look at what we've done. Look at what we've all participated in. Look at what we've all engaged in. Look at what's been achieved by American Jewry in this country. And all we're asking for is to be seen and to be recognized and to be treated justly and fairly. So when you celebrate the Passover Seder this year, I hope that there is an added layer of meaning to your Passover Seder. And I hope that when you sing the Dayenu, you think about me. And you think about the book of Ezra. And you think about our redemption. And you think about the difficult, mixed, uncertain times that we're living through right now. We're not the first, and we're not the last. And we're going to keep singing Dayenu. Right?
Okay, thank you so much, amazing. All right, everybody, I'm so glad that you're all with us, and may we begin this month, this year in redemption and journey towards the redemption next Adar together. And Chag Sameach, an early happy Pesach. I'll see you all multiple times, but